Have you tried everything to get pregnant only to feel like you're still missing a key piece of the puzzle? Maybe you've been told your labs are normal, but deep down, you know something is off. What if the missing link isn't another medication or another round of waiting, but a whole body approach that actually gets to the root? Today, I'm joined by Tsao, a leading expert in alternative and Chinese medicine, specializing in fertility and women's health. With over 22 years of experience, she's helped countless women optimize their fertility through acupuncture, herbal medicine, and traditional healing wisdom. In this episode, she's sharing how Chinese medicine can help remove fertility roadblocks, regulate hormones, and bring your body into balance so conception can finally happen. Feeling like this whole baby making journey is never going to work out? You've done it all: diet changes, supplements, tracking your cycle, and yet the pregnancy test is negative. It's so frustrating, and you're asking yourself, why isn't this happening for us? I'm Susan Gladstein, a holistic fertility coach and mom to 7, including 2 miracle babies after a vasectomy reversal, and I get it. Being told everything looks fine by doctors while still feeling stuck can leave you feeling hopeless and confused. On this podcast, I'll share practical, natural ways to support your fertility without all the overwhelm. Forget the everything's normal talk and the rush into fertility treatments. I'm here to show you a better way. If you're ready to take practical steps that fit with God's plan for your family, you're in the right place. I truly believe that you can have the baby you've been praying for. I'm super excited because I have Cho here, and she is a highly skilled expert in alternative and Chinese medicine, which has been something that, as I've gotten more into the fertility world, has been super interesting to me because it's not something in the last, 10 years or so that I've been focused on health and holistic things. That this is a new thing. And so I'm excited to bring her on to talk about how this all plays into fertility and stress management, sleep, all the things that are going to help you get pregnant. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Susan. I'm very excited to be on your podcast, and I hope that our dialogue is going to be informative and help couples to conceive with more ease.
I love that. There's a lot of people who are like me that are listening that maybe the whole Chinese medicine thing is a complete just foreign. They've never heard of it. They've not tiptoed into it or anything. So I'm wondering if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about what it is and how it compares to even Western medicine that we're probably more familiar with.
Oh, that is a big comparison. All right. So Chinese medicine, so even using the word, let's say medicine, is probably not as accurate as looking at how the, I guess, the paradigm, the approach of looking at health and wellness as a whole. And so Chinese medicine has ways of living. So there are 8 branches. And so we look at like acupuncture, herbal medicine, body work, look at exercise, food medicine, meditation, feng shui, which is art and science of placement, and then also cosmology, which would be like zodiac and things like that. And so things like feng shui and the zodiac are considered more esoteric. However, they kind of give us like where are we in space and time, as well as what influences when we were born. The seasons are are all going to really affect our health and wellness. So the paradigm or the approach in Chinese medicine is really about cultivating health and wellness, ultimately longevity, and similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have like the levels of food, clothing, and shelter, and then education, a job, and meaning, and then you get to the top where it's this idea of self-actualization, where you, what's your purpose to be here? And so the idea is that you, when you're working with a practitioner, is they're going to help you where you are with tools like acupuncture, herbs, body work, and at the same time, you as the patient are really a participant. So, taking care of how you eat, making sure that you're exercising, being mindful of what your attention is on, and that's like a large part what we see in the Western culture is like the stress. It's this kind of mental stress, where we're triggered all the time. So the difference being, and this I know it's a kind of a long intro, is that instead of broken and fix, where you look at like, oh, this is broken, I'm going to give you a medication to fix, it really looks at something known as more like a root and a branch. So the branch are your symptoms, but at the root of it is going to be what you need to treat as well and to be involved. So if someone doesn't really fix you, they're going to support your body to naturally heal itself, right? And even with Western medicine, you can give a medication and it's up to the body to take it in and resonate with it, which is why, a cookie cutter approach to health doesn't work. And especially in fertility, it can be very, heartbreaking, very frustrating to go through lots of cycles and try protocols that then be told like, well, I don't know it's unexplained infertility, right? Because just looking at everyone as the same, you're not going to get the same outcome.
I personally really like adhere to and advocate for a very individualized, because we're all so different in our experiences and our exposure to like toxins and even the food that we eat and how much sleep we get and all of that stuff, that I think a lot of times that we think, and I don't know if it's just kind of a Western medicine thing or what, but we think that we've got to make these big, massive changes or do these things to achieve the outcome of pregnancy. But in reality, it's like your day in and day out. Like, I'm a big fan of thinking about like aging in reverse or thinking about living a long time. And as a result of focusing on that, then you end up being more fertile just because you're taking the foundational steps that are required. So why do you see that people sort of turn to this, Chinese medicine for improving their fertility? What are some common things that you see that people are searching for?
Well, I want to say that patients, the people who come to me, usually have tried everything Western, and they're kind of like, this is, I don't know what else to do, but they feel there's something that isn't resonating. Sitting in the doctor's office, someone saying like, well, your chance of getting pregnant, or this is what we see, these are your numbers. And I personally have experienced that kind of like, oh, this number here they're focusing on. I'm like, it's just one number. You have to look at everything and not just focus on one number to give a drug to kind of get that number down, when that's not a good representation of the whole person. So mostly females come because they're much more kind of proactive, I would say, at searching for themselves and also for their partner. I'd have to say culturally, it's always kind of like the woman, it's like, oh, she's to blame, or she has a weakness or something. So women are much more open to and really searching to kind of help themselves. And what drives them is there's more and more research being done very specifically with fertility and improving outcomes. So that all the way back in like 2002, the research that was done in Germany that improved IVF fertility by like 22% or more. It was even more. So, and that was with women that were like 40, 41. And that was, even that study wasn't that great. There's better studies since, but it really debunked this idea of a placebo effect. And really, so you start to look at you can kind of cross over some of that. And so the shift is being proactive and connecting, with an inner truth. When someone tells you something and you go, that it doesn't sound right, like it doesn't feel right, and I need to search this out. And so this is where, women come to see me. They want, in couples, because it's the desperation is going to be like, well, I'm doing everything right and I'm still not getting pregnant. We've done all the tests. They can't find anything. And then sometimes I find that, some of the, well, maybe you have this, or maybe and then it becomes more and more of like searching, I always say searching for what's not there because it's so easy to find, to kind of like, well, there must be something wrong with you somewhere. And oftentimes it is the daily, it is all of those little things of, the poor sleep, the food, the toxins, like all of those little things that are enough to make a disruption. And even if it's not measurable, let's say by a Western standard, you have to look at how is stress manifesting in this person. And whatever is happening, it's disrupting their body at the root level, constitutionally, so that they're not able to produce, like to reproduce, right? So the body is like, this is so out of balance. It's just not happening. And so that can be very frustrating. And the other thing is no matter what someone will say their symptoms are, or they have this weird thing that happens, or it's part of like a whole big pattern of looking at everything in their life, like not just, their daily, but also you look at their health history, something that, maybe they had strep, or they had mono, or some other thing that has continued to create like a little bit of inflammation. So you'll see it a lot with recurring yeast infections or recurring bladder infections and things like that. Then the body is always in a state of inflammation, and that's enough to cause a disruption. And it makes sense. And then you treat that along with improving blood flow and a lot of, things for resetting the nervous system. So they're more in that parasympathetic state, rest and digest. And that's also, reproduction. And, looking at also the history, how long was somebody on hormonal birth control, or did they have, other kinds of problems really early on that were masked by birth control, right? With that, and so those are like really kind of like looking back, what is someone's constitution, and really treating that whole person. So not just their, the reproductive organs, because that's, your overall health is going to be a indication of your reproductive health. So reproductive problems are the symptom of, something else. And so we have to look at that other piece. So that's, and they participate and they feel better, right? And then they get pregnant, or if they're going through, assisted reproductive therapies, their outcomes are better, right? So they don't have to do multiple cycles that really we can help to regulate that so that their body is not as disrupted by medication.
And I think, like, even in my experience, when I talk to clients and I'm trying to sort of like pull out all of these little details of their health history, and I don't know that, Western medicine, just because of the way that it's set up and it's very like, you know, I go to the clinic and I'm in and out. It's very like, got any questions? Nope, good. And here I am trying to pull all of this information to help me get sort of like the big picture, like what is the root cause, what's going on, that I don't think that a lot of people realize how important all of those foundational pieces, whether it's stress management or sleep or even just like vitamin D levels or being outside, how much movement are you getting? Like all of those things count. But I don't know if people just think kind of being really invasive, but like that's all to me so powerful when you can really get to the root of what's going on, that I think is missing in a lot of what anecdotally from me and from a lot of my clients that they've experienced when they go to the doctor. Well, it's just like, yep, your labs, they all look normal. And then I look at them and I'm like, well, you might be normal in a population that's generally unhealthy. That's a moving scale. But when I look at it, like I can see a lot of adrenal stress and all of these things that maybe you're just so used to being stressed that you have no idea that your body is responding in such a way where there is lots of inflammation. And I always say a stressed body is not going to bring another life form onto it because it's already in this like fight or flight. I've got to like maintain equilibrium. So it's so important to even recognize how important just managing stress and all of that stuff is, that I don't think that it's, you know, as mainstream. I think people are coming around to it a bit more, but definitely not in most Western medicine circles, which is why I'm so fascinated by just incorporating all of this knowledge and the importance of it so that whenever I'm asking clients a lot of detailed questions and some people are resistant or don't think that it's that important, that it really is. So I'm curious, like, what kind of like fertility challenges do you see most often?
The fertility challenges that I see most often is, and I don't even know if I want to just say that being on hormonal birth control for, so many of the women now that are coming to see me, or now they're like, it's getting younger and younger, like early 30s, and much of them are they want to maybe freeze their eggs, or and they're like looking much more at kind of like preserving their fertility. And so I would say the challenge is that they don't understand their own body at a really deep level, and there's some aspect of outsourcing their fertility in a way. It's like, oh, well, I can just do that, or I can always like get a surrogate, or I can, there's like, there are many options that are available, which is fantastic. But to kind of like normalize that, I find it is like not paying attention to themselves in a way. There's a disconnection. And so I see oftentimes uh, irregular cycles. I see different kinds of mood stabilizers. Women tend to be on lots of medication, that they're always on things. And the I would say that the challenge is for them to have some kind of a work balance. I would say would be more like when I'm looking at what's their issue. And a big part of it is going to be their stress. And when I say stress, we kind of go, oh, stress, I'm stressed, I'm not stressed. So most people believe that stress is an event. Like they go, "Oh yeah, that happened. That was so stressful, that thing." But they oftentimes don't recognize like how it's manifesting in their body because it's normalized. So they're like, "Oh, I'm not stressed." And they're like, "Yeah, but you have skin rashes, you have gas and bloating, poor sleep, poor digestion, body aches and pains, like all of those things that their body is saying, I'm stressed. But there's the idea of like what is stress, or inflammation is like a big one, getting sick all the time. So what is stress for them? It's like an idea of like an event versus recognizing what's in their body. Another big challenge, which is more and more, is more women are being diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome and endometriosis. It seemed, and for sure, there are environmental factors, and kind of finding it out again if they were on hormonal birth control because they were always having painful periods, that was masking the signs, right, that they were having. And also, uh, too early to be on before they even had an opportunity for their body to kind of normalize, right? So it is, I would say, it's normal for a young woman when she gets a period for it to be irregular for until she officially stops growing, right? So the body, it's going to be irregular. So you figure around 18, 19, the cycle should normalize. So a teenager who has an irregular cycle, it's not a great thing to stick them on, you know, because we're going to normalize your cycle. You're actually suppressing it, or in fact, um, disrupting it, and that I see has like longer term consequences of like the body doesn't know what to do when it's off, and you can get it back. So that polycystic ovary syndrome, also a lot of thyroid issues, which are again endocrine related. Yeah. So, and then we have to work with diet and things that are affecting it. There are different kinds of things that are, that are going to make it worse, which they can do. They need to do.
Hmm. I think for me and my clients, I mean, they're always so hyper focused on the male side of things, which is like probably a little bit counter to what most people are seeking fertility. It's kind of been deemed as a woman issue, but now they're saying like over the last 20 years, like male fertility, aside of having vasectomies or reversals, male fertility has declined by 50% over the last 20 years. So it's definitely a problem that if it's not being addressed, but one of the main things, obviously, after reversal is that there is a healing process that has to happen. I mean, you're basically taking, I don't know, what amounts to like a piece of hair and trying to reconnect it in some cases. And in other cases, it's rerouting. Um, but that if you already have a lifestyle where you're dealing with inflammation, whether it's from the food that you eat, the stress that you have, I mean, even just sitting in traffic can be stressful. And if you're, have a long commute daily and that you're not just like zoned out to a podcast or something, but you're road raging constantly, like that's going to cause more stress, more inflammation. So a lot of the people that I speak to are more focused on the male side. But like in our case, it took us 2 years, even though my husband's semen analysis numbers looked phenomenal. And I can look back now with what I know now that I didn't know then and realize how much stress I was under that I did not pay attention to. So I spent 2 years being very focused on the foundational things. So, what would you recommend if somebody's listening to this and thinking, like, oh, I've got an interest in, a different way of thinking than Western medicine? What are some foundational things that you would tell couples who were trying to focus on not only fertility, but even just longevity and aging well? So that, I mean, that's my big thing. Like, I want to be a grandmother that my grandkids go back to my kids' house and they're like, she wore us out. Like, I want to be super active. So that's where my focus is. But I think a lot of times we get so wrapped up into an end goal, whether it's, the weight on a scale or just getting to the pregnancy, that we don't think beyond that. So, what are some foundational things that you would recommend someone sort of focus their attention on?
Okay. First of all, I just want to address a little bit of the male factor, because I know we were covering the female factor. If that's what, okay. So for men, okay, the sitting thing, it's just, it's causing stagnation. And one of the tenets of Chinese medicine is the free flow of qi and blood. With fertility, it is about blood flow, right? Making sure that those organs are receiving enough blood flow and also lymphatic clearing, so detoxifying any kind of toxicity. The prostate gland and everything is like right there next to the colon. So there's a lot of um, let's say waste in the area that's, and the wall of the large intestine is extremely thin. I mean, it's literally like right there, up against the prostate, which is why when they do a prostate exam, they do a digital exam, right? Because then you can actually feel the prostate. And so if somebody has poor let's say intestinal permeability, what you start to have is inflammation or something moving in through the wall of the colon, right, or through the intestinal the permeability. And you have inflammation, you can have low grade infection. So having, getting enough exercise, movement, right? You want to also look at things that cause inflammation, like dietary. You want to look at the gut microbiome so that you don't have leaky gut syndrome, right? And I mean, I can share, like, women may talk about their bowel movements, and but oftentimes men, they're not going to talk about, like, how's your bowel movement? It's fine, right? And so making sure that they have a good gut microbiome, and that's for all of us, right? We need that to relieve the inflammation and help with nutrient absorption. Uh, Men, it does take a good, 3 to 4 months to have a new sperm turnover. So this is like once a couple is deciding we're going to do this, it takes a lot longer for them to like clear stuff out, right? So that's part of it. The other thing too is oftentimes viruses will attack the germ cells in the testicles. And so it's not really a matter of like, sperm, it's also the quality, right? Or can be affected and will affect, for older men, there's a higher chance of what they call DNA degradation, right? Which will cause miscarriage in women, like, later on. So we're also like noticing, like, hey, that women are carrying the other half of the DNA part of it. So if the male is not healthy, it's going to cause miscarriage, right? And so it's not because the woman doesn't have a good lining, it's actually there's a lot of male factor which is now coming into play. The other thing too, taking vitamin D and zinc and E, like, all of those things are really important. And again, of course, exercise, like not wearing like tight pants and sitting for long periods of time, right? To make sure to also do some lymphatic drainage and things like that. And also like not riding the bicycle, that or sitting in hot tubs and things like too hot, but really to take care of the whole person, and for sure the nervous system, right? Because uh, not getting sleep, uh, the stress levels are going to create stress hormones, which in turn create inflammation. And again, oftentimes men may not admit that they're stressed, or maybe don't even recognize it within themselves because they got to be tough. But then it'll show up in things like a high blood pressure, or acid reflux, or other little other things that are going on, and poor sleep, and things like that. So definitely those are the areas that need to be addressed and to be aware, like mindful. And I would say like mindfulness practices for sure, because getting control over the things that stress a person out, being able to quickly reset the nervous system is important. And acupuncture is one of the best things, I would say, for doing that, because of the way that it works on the central nervous system for inflammation.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I've been recommending that a lot lately to various clients who are struggling with, well, obviously not getting pregnant, but sometimes it's a matter of either their motility is off or their morphology is off, or something, they have a high pH in their semen analysis, that sort of thing. So I'm glad that you brought up that acupuncture. Could you kind of just tell us a little bit more, maybe for those who aren't familiar with how that is, because I've been hearing a lot in the fertility world recently, but how is acupuncture beneficial to fertility in particular?
Well, number one, locally, it'll increases blood flow and lymphatic flow, so helping to remove toxins. It actually acts on the central nervous system so that you have anti-inflammatory chemicals get released, endorphins, which actually lower the inflammation. Because it works with the nervous system, it helps to reset that. Instead of being in the stressed state of fight or flight, it actually helps to bring that back into balance. So always we're looking at helping a person get to homeostasis, right? To where their body is going to be able to regulate itself. When someone is like constantly traumatized, and like doom scrolling or listening to what's on the news, or we can like have this buildup of stress, and even if we know it, we are unable to stop it. So when you try to sleep, your mind is racing, can't think, brain fog, right? And so you need something that can actually help to make that shift. And it's a non-drug therapy, right? So it's very safe if someone's doing any other, like with medication or anything else, physical therapy, or that it's not going to interfere. It's only going to support their body to work better, which is one of the reasons why the outcomes are so much better using acupuncture and also other, let's say, complementary therapies, because it supports the person's natural healing, right? To help them get into balance, and then you can heal, and then you can transform, right? So if we're off balance, then it's really hard. We're always chasing something. It was I think of it as that little wheel on the shopping cart that is like kind of like off, and you're pushing and you're trying to you're pushing, and it kind of works, but it doesn't really work. And so we really need to bring things into alignment, and then they go smoothly. You want to find someone who's a licensed acupuncturist that has passed their national boards and is accredited and has several years of experience, especially working, you could say working with fertility, but overall it has some good reviews. Yeah. And so that is going to make a difference for sure. Even if they're going to do just like a few ear points or something, that can help.
I really love that analogy of the shopping cart because I don't know that before I sort of went down, I don't know, the quote unquote rabbit hole of like holistic health and really taking a big picture approach. And there were so many aspects of my own life, just like the way that I grew up. Grew up in Texas, and our diet was, a lot of sweet tea and a lot of comfort foods, which included mostly carbs, and was a big emotional eater, but like really understanding how the body um, deals with or perceives stress, and how if you don't have that sort of like equilibrium or balance going on, then it is going to be a whole lot more difficult to get pregnant. Um, and you just like overall feel better. That's what I like when I'm talking to guys and I'm telling them about like, yes, it's going to improve your sperm health, which I know you've spent a lot of money and time and effort, and that's what you're hyper focused on. But like just overall to feel better and have more energy and sleep better and all of these things, when you have that, the byproduct is going to be that you're more fertile. So I'm curious, before we finish up here, how do you decide when you see a client what is sort of like the priority that you want to treat with fertility?
Great question, because I look at their whole health history, and that's like 6 pages of an intake, and looking at everything, and then what will be the priority. It'll just be like a difference in priority, so it may be like the top 3 things I'm going to work on with them, but the one thing is got to be like the thing, if you don't address it, none of this will get better. So what you were talking about, if somebody has, like, you see like adrenal fatigue, you can do all the blood, you could move the blood, you could, like treat the structural. So I look at like the structural, like, is there something going on structurally in the pelvis? Then I'm looking at, are they more immune, like they've always gotten sick all the time, and so therefore there's a constant lowered immune system and inflammation. Then I look at, okay, their adrenal, like what's going on with their adrenals and their nervous system. And so all of those things can actually, the symptoms may all look alike, like, oh, they have all of that. But within there, there's going to be something that is the prime mover. And that's the one, if you don't address that, it's not going to happen, right? So if someone is structurally off balance, that helping their nervous system, yes, of course, that's right. Increasing blood flow, yes, that's like all of those things. But if they're having like an issue where something is off, that if you don't address that part, like you're doing all these other things, which is always I'm looking at the nervous system, the immune system, circulation, focusing on the things for sleep and digest, like what's going on with all of those things. But certain things will trigger those other symptoms. So we want to make sure that the one thing that we're able to like look at, in terms of that person constitutionally, is going to be like, oh, I'm going to address this from many different ways, because it's always going to support that, let's say, nervous system piece. And so another person, same kind of like, but they're going to be more of immune. And if I don't address their immune system as like the priority, I'm doing all the other things. But to really look at that, this person constitutionally, this is where it's like that little weak spot where the termite can come in, type of thing, or that little crack where the water is going to get in. If we don't address that, that's going to like bring everything down. And so that's how I look at in terms of their whatever their symptoms are. I'm always going tracing it back to, how long have you had that for, or when did this happen, to determine like this was the crack that started it, and then it gets bigger and bigger, right? And more symptoms show up, but those are because of this thing. It's actually very it's always very interesting, I would say that, and very helpful for them to be like, oh yeah, that like it never, that wound, it never really healed, it still has that funny feeling to it. And like, yeah, so what does that say? This is, your body should have gotten better, right? And that's also what I look at, other kinds of like injuries. How long is it? There's a certain period of time where you should recover. And if it's going on months and months and years, then we're looking at, there's something else going on that's preventing this healing piece. And so we need to look at that, not just go like, oh yeah, do more physical therapy, or like, you could do that, but there's something else happening here that we need to address. And it may have nothing to do with that sprain, but it's like interrupting the whole system. And that's how and so that's the approach. That's my approach. And also, whether I'm doing fertility or something else, we're really looking at, what can help this person to their, so that their body will heal.
And I kind of do something similar with my clients where it's like, yes, I want to find what the root cause. And I've discovered that so many times my clients have felt either unheard or even dismissed by their doctors because their doctors are saying one thing and they like in their gut think that there's got to be something else, like there's something there. But a lot of times it's like, well, the doctor knows best, so I don't want to advocate for myself or speak up, or and then in hindsight someone discovers something because they've gone more into a holistic or you know outside of Western medicine, that where it's like, man, why did I spend so long like not speaking up for myself? So I really appreciate the fact that this is, I think it's a better approach because people can feel heard and equipped with knowledge to speak up for themselves, to advocate for themselves, or even if it's just knowing what questions to ask when they see their doctor. I think is so important and what I sort of pride my own practice in. So I'm curious if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I need to know what Cho's got going on. How do they find you?
Well, I think I shared my link. There's like the link tree. I'm not that great at being on social media, as they say, but I do have a Instagram, which is Integrative Healing Arts NYC. And I also have my website, which is integrativehealingarts.com, which yeah, you
And
can
I'll
make
make sure
sure.
that that gets put in the show notes, as well as
Yeah,
the chapter from your book as
yeah. So we're doing the, yeah, for, and I think that'll apply for like everyone. I think the one on perfection. Um, yeah, I mean, I do find that, I'm very much an advocate for my patients so that they can make informed decisions. And oftentimes they'll come and, oh, what did the doctor say? Oh, they did. And I'm like, well, did they check this? Did they, like, no, what is that? And I'm like, okay, let's kind of break down some of the things. And like, oh, I didn't ask that, I didn't. And I'm like, okay, well, next time we'll write down, like, if you have questions, just write them down so that you'll remember to ask them, because the information can be overwhelming. And just like, it's your right to ask. Yeah, and to be, not to be dismissed, to really find that. And I personally find I learn a lot from my patients because they get dismissed. And I go like, wow, that was weird. Like they did, I'm like, I'm going to research a little bit. Let me find out, like, why are they, why are they doing that? Or what's this protocol? Like, oh, I'm not for, like, did they say what? And they're like, no. Or even like, what medication did you get? They're like, I don't know. Like, okay, let's take a look at like what your protocol is, like based on the medications and stuff. So there is that, they almost feel like they can't ask, like they shouldn't ask,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
But doctors make mistakes, right? Sometimes they're like, oh, what? Oh, wait a second. No, 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 I didn't mean to give that. Or, I mean, I can tell you stories, but won't. So always important to like double check and ask, and to be your own advocate.
Is there anything else before we jump off that you would just want to share with couples who are, you know, in this case, it's like they've spent a lot of extra money. Most times they've had the a vasectomy in regret, and now they're desperately wanting children. And is there anything that you would want to say to a couple that has spent? I mean, it's kind of like in the same, I guess, as the IVF world. It's like you've spent lots of time and money, and you're in doctor's office and all the things. Is there anything that you would want to say to encourage them or to advocate for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the time that it takes to heal is going to be the time that it takes to heal, right? And you've got to like look at, do like all the different moving parts, but and look at it. I would say not just because, I mean, usually what the motivator is, oh, we want this to have a baby, and so now I got to get healthy and get on board, but to really like look at it as like like I'm like doing it now, and it's going to help me the rest of my life, right? And so what brought to the attention is, oh, I'm not healthy now. I need to get healthy for this one thing. But actually, you want to look at it, you're doing it for yourself, and not to worry about it, not to get like why isn't working, because it has a certain amount of time. The focus, and what I find is just to be able to cultivate that wellness and to kind of pull it all together in a bigger piece, right? As we kind of talked about it at the beginning, is like you want to be in alignment, and that is where everything is easier because you're doing it. Like, yeah, you go to bed early, you're not watching TV or whatever that is, but like recognize how much better you feel with all of those things that you're doing, because that is creates that positive feedback that you're taking care of your health. Because once you have the kid, you need that longevity, right? You need to, and you also need to be the model of health for your kids. And yeah, so the other thing I wanted to say is, no matter what you're doing, you can always incorporate these, like this paradigm, even if you're taking Western pharmaceutical medications or doing stuff, but to really like kind of like think of it in a bigger way of how it is, making that connection for you. And that's that consciousness piece, so that you're living consciously and making those conscious health choices.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and expertise and tips and all the things, because I know that it's not something that's well talked about in our circles. And again, I'll make sure that the way to get a hold of you and how you can get a chapter from her book is all included in the show notes so that they can find you and pick your brain some more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Susan.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me on Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal. I hope you're feeling encouraged and more hopeful on your journey to growing your family. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra support. I absolutely love reading your reviews. They mean the world to me. Like, seriously, words of affirmation are my love language. So let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram at Conceiving After VR, and join our Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal Facebook community for even more support and encouragement. I believe that God placed the desire for a child on your heart for a reason, and I'm grateful to walk alongside you in this season, to encourage you, and to help you find joy in the journey, trusting that His plan is greater than we could ever imagine.
Thanks for listening.